Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short. And it is the big question, a question posed by me. It is, name 3 video games from your past, from your youth, from your time playing games, from whatever console, from whatever era, within reason, of course. If you start choosing an Xbox One game for this, it's going to look really stupid. So hopefully you haven't done that. I want to see a remake of Elden Ring. It's fine. It's good. It is that. We have chosen 3 games. The big question is, what 3 games would you like to see get remade? And when I say remade, I mean a la Resident Evil, a la Dead Space, what we've seen in recent times from Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, 4, to the Dead Space remake. A full ground-up rebuilding of the experience, not a re-release, not a HD touch-up. We're talking about go to it, improve it, fix it, twist it, change things if you need to do, just remake the freaking game. So 3 of them, basically. And that's a wide-ranging series of games you could choose.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if we have doubled up on any of these because, we've previously before, and maybe not in video format, but we've spoken before about our desires for certain games to be remade in that way that you've just mentioned. And usually it will do go down the more predictable route some of the time. So, it'd be quite interesting to do a couple of these videos. Maybe we get the more predictable ones out of the way and go down to maybe some other like more obscure choices. But these are probably the ones I've got are quite commonly requested, I imagine.
So we might not have that concern because I decided to try and avoid the commonly accepted one, except maybe one that I think we likely could have, but maybe not in this video, maybe in a future big question when we return to this. And maybe if we specify, I don't know, we do it for the Mega Drive or something like that in a specific. We may not have, but I decided to avoid because there are 1 or 2 that immediately jumped to mind. So I was like, well, don't bother putting that in there basically because everybody wants that, So, and if you've got it, I can at least add my 2 cents on it. At least that we might have a little bit more detail to actually go on here if that's the case. So we'll get this started. Well then, do you want to choose your first one? What's your most common one?
Okay, and I'll just quickly also say that it's interesting because a lot of these games I'm going to mention, I do feel are getting to the point where it may actually happen, just because the pool of like possibilities for remakes is kind of dry up. So I think these are probably quite popular ones. But my first one that I'll throw out there is the Blood Omen Soul Reaver franchise. I think that's one that a lot of people want to happen. I actually remember not too long ago, I can't remember who sent it to me, but it was a survey that maybe it was Crystal Dynamics. I think they sent out this survey that basically asking people literally how they would feel about a remake of the Soul. I think it was specifically Soul Reaver and what they would like that to be and stuff like that. And I think it was basically designed to get a general idea of how many people will be interested in it. And I remember reading an article soon after that. It was really popular, and they got a lot of feedback and stuff like that. And I filled it out and everything. So, and that was probably like maybe a year or 2 ago. So I do feel there might be something bubbling in the background of that. But rather than mention them separately, Blood Omen and Soul Reaver, I just throw it onto one banner, the whole franchise as a whole. It's something that I'd love to see. I think the first game still holds up quite well, other than obviously the fact that it, graphically its age and some of the mechanics, the controls and stuff are a bit clunky now. But I still think that the general idea of the story, the music, all that, it's all kind of there. But it's the sort of thing where it obviously, like you said, it would have to be remade completely, overhaul the entire thing, and I don't know what that would look like because it's a top-down type game. So if they were to remake it, would they make it in more like a 3D, like, I don't know, first person, third person, what it would be? So what that would look like, how it could be authentic. But then it got me thinking that there's so many games that come out now that like replicate Blood Omen, that are like modern, and it's like a popular thing to make like indie games and stuff like that that are like throwbacks to these kind of like eras of games. So they're released every day, obviously with more modern graphics. So maybe like they could just do it in that style, and then that way also it wouldn't even cost that much money as well. But it depends how big they wanted to go with it. Obviously, Soul Reaver is like it's such a big step forward from Blood Omen. Yeah, Soul Reaver itself, at least the first Soul Reaver, it suffers from a lot of the same issues, but it will also over being a bit dated looking and stuff like that. But then it also has all the positives as well that are all there. It has the foundation, basically, I think, for something amazing that could be done. And it's been so long that the people that want it are like me and stuff like that grew up playing the games. They've got the nostalgia and they want to see it really badly. Because, like I said, it's one of the last ones that hasn't been done, one of those last classic PS1 era games.
Hmm.
But then you can market it in a new way to hopefully bring in new eyes upon it. I've said enough anyway, so that's my first one.
No, more detail is better. Ultimately, just saying, "Oh, I want a remade," and then leaving it there would be make for a crap video. I have massive reservations of this ever happening. Absolute absurdity, to be honest, to a certain degree, regardless of what anyone's nostalgic value for it. Because the problem is where do you start with this? I think they could get away with ignoring Blood Omen and starting with Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, and starting the story from there, but reworking the story without having to do Blood Omen, because with Blood Omen is so different to Soul Reaver visually, thematically, gameplay wise, that I mean, that if you're talking about grounds up remake, Blood Omen would need it. I would argue a idea of doing it third person and a later Blood Omen games would be fascinating. But then how do you get the size of Blood Omen? The scope and scale of it it's a lot to do there. Where Soul Reaver maybe doesn't need as much. Now, I hold a lot of nostalgic value for Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. However, I went back and played it. Oh, I don't know, about a year and a half ago on an emulator. And I still think it's a good game, but I think it is an incredibly overrated game. I think not only is it unnecessarily confusing mechanics and how it's explained and explored, it is one of the emptiest, dullest experiences where there's next to no fucking enemies and there's nothing going on except, look, here's more caves. Now switch between us and all that. I was actually really surprised by how empty that world. I'd forgotten how empty that world is. That is something you could improve upon with a remake. You could fill it with villages of humans and locations and vampires and stuff like that. I know it's supposed to be, oh, the world's dying and all the vampires are dead except for a handful and stuff like that. That's really boring. That's not a fun game to play, guys. Do you know what I mean? But the idea of a modern technology, modern graphical systems, being able to utilize the mix between the spirit world and the material and the physical world, the material and what's the other world? Material, spectral world. I think they could do amazing things like that in a remake. Yeah, but where do we stop? There's the problem with doing a franchise as a whole. So I do think that would give them the opportunity to, because what unfortunately I think didn't help Soul Reaver 2 was that it got released only on PlayStation 2. And it was just a continuation of Soul Reaver. So if you weren't a fan of Soul Reaver, you weren't checking out Soul Reaver 2. So that seems to have killed it. Obviously, there were later Blood Omen games. I vaguely remember playing one on the GameCube.
Yeah, there was Blood Omen 2 on the GameCube. Yeah.
But that's about where it ends. I can't remember doing any more after that. And obviously, we've had
There's a PlayStation 2 game called Legacy of Kain Defiance, and that was the final one, and that ends on like a massive cliffhanger, basically. And it's never been resolved to date. Yeah.
I think it would be such an incredible undertaking. And I don't know if the love or if the desire is there big enough. I mean, I'd love you talk about a poll, but like, what did it have statistics for the number of people that replied?
No, I mean they never released like official numbers, but I just think like maybe you'd market it as something new that some people that never heard of it, you'd make it like a new franchise, and with Crystal Dynamics behind it, maybe now they're not involved in doing Tomb Raider anymore. Maybe I don't know what kind of game it could be like, but we've seen how they can do those sort of action type games with Soul Reaver at least, and maybe Legacy of Kain, Blood Omen. That always was like the game that had the more difficulty stuff more of like a difficulty curve to it. So with the popularity of something like Dark Souls, it could, that's like a popular subgenre right now. The Soul-like games, maybe that you could do that kind of angle because it always kind of had that feel to it in a way from like the top down. So if I'm not like that's just me like spitballing, but like
that's a cool idea
you could do. But I just think like the story, like one things that like modern video games are lacking is like great stories, and I think it just has that. The dynamic between Raziel and Kain is so good, and the story between them and stuff. I just love it so much. So I'd love it to happen. But yeah, that's my first one.
I do agree with you. I do agree with you there, but be careful, man. You know what will happen is these games appeared in the PlayStation. Sony will go and fund them to remake it, but then obviously say, look, you can't release it on any other console, but then cry about everyone then doing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's
sorry people, I know it's being bitchy, but that's kind of like, that's the one infuriating thing. I got no love for any company. I'm not a simp. If you're a fucking simp that's pro Sony or pro Microsoft and simping after billion-dollar industries and fucking companies, take your head for a shit. But this whole like, they can't have an exclusive, while then trying to make everything exclusive and throw money at developers to ensure that those games can't appear to anyone else, but then criticizing another company for doing it, you kind of look like dickheads, I think, personally.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get too deep into it. But obviously, there's a big acquisition going on with
Of
Microsoft
course,
right
yeah.
now, and a big detail developed recently. We obviously live in the UK, so there was a big development recently about a organization in the UK that are attempting to block this deal, and seemingly they're the only organization doing that. So that's quite interesting. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't want to get too deep into it. Yeah, it's just when I think of, I say that because when I think of Legacy of Kain, I think of Soul River. I do associate it with a Sony console more than anything else.
its origins are definitely obviously rooted in the Sony side of things, but the Legacy of Kain Defiance, that game, I believe that was on the original Xbox 360, I believe. So I might
So
be wrong.
yeah, it has done it. Yeah,
And
we had a game appear in the GameCube, so that's a Nintendo property as well.
yeah, it's been around, but I think it's just been long enough. It's laid dormant like a vampire that needs to rise from its crypt now. Yeah.
Uh, okay, cool. All right. My first one then. It's appeared on two consoles. Originally on the Dreamcast, and then later on the GameCube as a sort of reworked version with some extra content put in. It is one of the forgotten RPGs, one of the finest role-playing games out there that everyone forgets about until they remember and go, oh my God, just remake that or re-release it. It is Skies of Arcadia.
Well, this is a game I know you obviously have great love for, but it's one of those ones that I never played like that much. Like I played it like a little bit, but it was not like a game I fully completed or anything back in the day. So you'll have to basically take the wheel on this one.
Yeah, it's simple enough. It's Final Fantasy in that size and scope, with a sort of industrialized air pirate environment, dealing with the end of the world, villains, and it's a mix of obviously standard RPG elements where you're doing turn-based combat, fighting with teams of 3 and so on. Mixed in alongside that, of course, as well, you've got airship battles as well, which also turn-based and add a new nuance. Clever bosses, very, very epic finale, really memorable characters, really likable characters as well. It would be re-released on the GameCube as Skies of Arcadia Legends, which would include extra content, including a villain, a boss that reoccurs throughout the game, like a bounty, who would get really fucking difficult. It's one of those massively underrated RPGs, kind of like, the way people talk about Lost Odyssey, the Xbox 360, and consider that to be that's Skies of Arcadia, but back then.
Yeah, even though, like I said, it's not something that I remember playing too much of, but I know it has like a huge cult following. It's sort of thing that a lot of people do mention as wanting to see it come back and stuff like that. I know it's got like some very passionate fan base.
It does. Yeah. It does. Yeah, so that's my first one. If we're getting Final Fantasy VII remakes, who knows? I guess Skies of Arcadia isn't as popular.
Yeah, well, we're not getting it. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yes.
Okay, so my next one, again, super predictable, and I do feel like there's a very good possibility this might happen, but the Metal Gear Solid games, and I'll throw in there Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3. And I just don't know how this hasn't happened. It completely blows my mind. It seems like such a no-brainer. There's a lot of rumors about the first game getting remade. I'm not sure. There's some like talk of like potential exclusivity, I believe, on the Sony side.
Right.
So that'd be disappointing, and I think that'd be very strange, especially for a company like, I know Konami is obviously a Japanese company and stuff like that, but Konami, obviously, there's a lot of goodwill surrounding Konami, but then there's the rumors about there's the rumors about the new Silent Hill remake is going to be exclusive. So yeah, I mean, this is obviously a game again very rooted in PlayStation and Sony, or yeah, so it's just one that like I said, I just don't know how it hasn't happened.
I find, what? You could consider this as just not so much a prediction, but our desires. I almost want to mock you for that one. But purely because, even though it's your choice and your desire, and I understand it, I mock it because to me that seems impossible. That seems never going to happen. Certainly not even certainly the first game, because not only do I feel that Konami has a hatred for their own IPs and the desperation to hang on to without actually doing anything with them, but also the no secret falling out with Kojima. So
Mm.
for I mean, they would have to put his name.
Yeah.
They couldn't
Yeah.
get away from that, and like.
I mean, I'm asking the question of how has this not happened, and I think you probably just
Mm,
answered there. I mean, that might be the reason why I haven't seen it hasn't seen daylight, because whatever the legalities are involved in him basically having some kind of control over it. But then, mate, I don't know, just you know, do what's best for business, man. Put it to the side, you know, just give the fans what they want.
but you are also forgetting something, and I find it wholly unacceptable. You are forgetting that Metal Gear Solid was already remade.
It was Twin Snakes version of it on the
Yes.
GameCube. That's true, and a lot of people have said like, why not? Even though in our like nostalgia rose tinted goggles, in my mind that looked amazing, and that would, but I'm sure like that's aged obviously quite badly now as well. But a lot of people would say like, oh, at least just port that one, for example. But yeah, it's just again also another thing that I would put out there is that with the Phantom Pain Metal Gear Solid game, which was the last one, last mainline one, like that it put Metal Gear into sort of an environment that it was never really in before, at the big open world and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So maybe they aren't even sure how they could take it back to a more like linear type
More.
experience. But then I guess you could make it super like emphasis on the stealth and stuff like that, like it was. So like a Splinter Cell type of thing, maybe, where it's just that's the real emphasis, and it's about in these small environments making your way through stealthily. But it's difficult, I guess, when you have something that's made in the way that the Phantom Pain was, and then to take it back. But I just think it's one of the biggest video game franchises of all time, and it's got a huge fan base, and I think it would sell like hotcakes. So do it.
I think that you could get away with all of the things you've said. They're simply based on the fan base, on nostalgia, and a desire to play that in a sort of reimagined world. I'll be honest, I have no interest in that at all. Like, to me, it's like, nah, don't want it, don't care for it and stuff like that. But that's yeah, I mean, that's your choice, really.
I didn't really talk much about the sequels other than the
Yeah,
first
two
game,
and three, yeah.
but like the second one again, that would I just feel like it wouldn't be as difficult as maybe that. But
Mm.
then it's like I do know the whole like goodwill thing with Konami. Like I said in the last Metal Gear game they did, Metal Gear Survive, they got like completely destroyed for that. But yeah, and I do think it will happen. Basically, I think it's probably not too far away.
Interesting. Well, we'll see in time. I think you're well off base with that one, but maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. What I know I'm incredibly off base with my next one is purely because there's absolutely no reason for this to not have had X amount of sequels already. Let alone a restart of the franchise, a remake of the original, and just kicking it off properly. But I think we need this. I need this. Viva Pinata.
Okay.
It's Viva Pinata. So, of course, this first appeared in the Xbox 360 with Viva Pinata Trouble in Paradise, which was a sequel that kind of expanded on the idea in a small way, not a larger way. And then there was a third game, which is a party game called Viva Pinata Party Animals. That is the end of the franchise. There's been nothing ever since. We have upgraded our technology. We have home PCs in consoles now. Are you telling me we can't do bigger, bolder, better gardens, more animals, wider array of things, more freedom of this garden building, more elaborate detail? We've seen games that follow a similar pattern really push the boat out here consistently. But Viva Pinata is one of my all-time favorite examples of relaxation, of where I can lose hours to chilling out to a wonderfully nice soundtrack that transitions between nights, just trying to coax these animals into my garden. The completionist part of me comes into play. There's all these things they could do to make it just basically make bigger. That's what I want, a bigger Viva Pinata game. So that's why it's on here. And it blows my mind, like I said, that this franchise just effectively died. And like, they can't be surprised, right? Because they can't be like, oh yeah, oh, we're gonna have to kill a franchise now because Party Animals sold so poorly. You made two games that were literally about world building, garden, and animals. And then went, no, let's change it and do Mario Party, but with pinatas, and no one bought it. What? Why would they? They're idiots. They drive me nuts with this one.
Yeah. Then you needed the peripheral camera thing, didn't you, as well?
That
So
was
it
for
seems like
Trouble in Paradise, yeah, with the cards and the camera and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yes, that was
Yeah, it seems like they just didn't really know what to do with it beyond the initial idea, which, like you said, maybe now the technology has advanced. It now they what to do with it would be easy. Just you've got the modern technology, you've got modern graphics, just do it bigger, better, and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, you've said you were going to choose more unconventional choices, but that's fairly unconventional. I just think, like, considering the state of how Xbox is now, it'd be quite hilarious if, like, under the next big unveiling, they bring out like Viva Pinata. I just can only imagine like the shitstorm for that. Get online. I mean, I always enjoyed Viva Pinata, and I like those kind of relaxation games as well. I think like I think like it don't ever had the general appeal, obviously, but that'd
Of
be no,
course.
I'd be down for it definitely with Game Pass on that. I would play it, no doubt.
I just love the idea of this audience of people would be like, oh yeah, we're announcing a next generation game, Viva Pinata game, silence, and me just going, yeah.
We just you got Nintendo releasing like Tears of the Kingdom. You got God of War on PlayStation, and then we'll get like Viva Pinata. I could see it happen. I could see it happening.
Yeah.
I could see it happening definitely. That sounds
Yeah,
like
but also because they're Microsoft at the same time announce a new version of Kinect that will tie directly into how you play Viva Pinata.
You'll be first in line to buy it.
Well, no, that would be annoying, but yeah. All right, what's your third one?
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure this is one that we can both talk about and have passion about, and that is the Resident Evil Code Veronica remake that is still not happened.
Hmm.
But I'm starting to feel like, unfortunately, the direction that Capcom are going in with it, it feels like with the release of four, they're probably going to do five and six, and maybe after that they'll go back, but it won't maybe make any sense, which is a shame because I've got a lot of love and nostalgia for Code Veronica, for playing it back in the day on Dreamcast and PlayStation 2, and I think it's one of it's the last remaining classic Resident Evil game that still has that old classic uh, fixed camera and like just all the little mechanics that you love from like the first and second game and third game and stuff like that. And it just hasn't been done yet, and it's such a huge shame. And there is a lot of people that want it to happen, and I'm definitely one of them.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I can't talk about a lot about this, and I suppose it ties into Resident Evil overall. So I personally believe now Capcom are done. I think they're done. There's no reason to do Resident Evil 1. It's been remade successfully, was ported over in HD. It still holds up at today's standards. I'm not sure what else they could do to Resident Evil 1 that would be viable. I think it's done. Obviously, 2, 3, and 4 are now done. I don't actually believe that they're going to touch 5 or 6. I don't think they will. I don't think they need to. I think they're doing these in between their major releases. The next Resident Evil game we get will be whatever comes after Village, whatever direction they're going in now. I think that's what it will be. I want them to do Code Veronica. It seems like a no-brainer. However, the difference here is this, and I'm going to use myself as an example. Whereas Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 were wildly beloved and played versions on major systems, that didn't happen to Code Veronica. It, of course, was released on the Dreamcast. It then got a little bit extra life when it appeared on PlayStation 2, and then got more life when it appeared on modern consoles as a re-release. That is when I first played it. I first played it when it was released on the Xbox 360, and I couldn't believe I'd missed it. It is now one of my all-time favorite Resident Evil games. It is one of the few Resident Evil games that I cite as being actually having scary elements.
Mm-hmm.
However, you don't have that fan base that you do with 2 and 4 particularly. Throw 3 in if you want, but 2 and 4 particularly. Those are beloved. Those are iconic. Everybody played them. They sold brilliantly and stuff like that. You don't have that with Code Veronica. You could say, well, based off how people react to this and so on, they have to presumably make a shit ton of money to make this viable. Are they willing to take that risk with Code Veronica? I'm not convinced they will. Not when they've got other properties that they are going to continue to work on and whatever else comes in the franchise and stuff like that. I also am a little bit dubious now about going too far with this. It's like, okay, cool. You've done this and you brought it up to speed and you've connected these games up and you've made the changes you wanted to make to move the franchise forward. I don't want the main Resident Evil storyline to get forgotten about in this in favor of remakes. You've done Village. Village is now, probably about a year old. It's probably still too early for the next one, but obviously Village as well drew a line under a certain part of a story. So it's like, well, let's see what's going on next. I don't want to see them focusing time on not saying unnecessary, because I would like to see it. I would very much like to see it, but I'm just not convinced that the urgency, because But then I say that. But if you'd said to me a year and a half after Resident Evil 2 and 3 came out, the remakes, oh, they'll do 4, I'd have said, no, they won't. No, they won't, because it's too modern. It's still fresh. It still holds up to a certain degree. I was completely wrong on that front. So I could be
Yeah, I
completely
mean,
wrong on this.
I never would have saw them doing four, but then the four is obviously one of the most popular, most successful ones in the whole franchise. So
Mm.
it did make sense, but it always felt to me like four was just like not like old enough, but it's obviously like really an ancient game at this point. So it was quite surprising to me to see them do that. But then I do feel like because Code Veronica is like a spin-off title, that gives it like less of a possibility of happening. And also it feels like the way they're trying to keep these re-releases of these games is they're trying to keep it not muddy the waters too much and make it too convoluted as some of these other games kind of made it become. But maybe if they ever run out of like remaking the other games, or they run out of ideas, maybe it'll happen, or maybe they'll make a game that'll have certain elements or certain enemies maybe from it and stuff like that, or whatnot. Who knows? But they seem to be in a cycle now where they're doing new mainline games as well as like one after the other. So maybe who knows? But I think these remakes have been super successful for them in terms of like sales. So and they seem to want the consistency. Like it'll feel odd, especially if you're someone that like didn't play the Xbox free. I mean, you can only play Resident Evil 5 on to a 360 game or it's backwards compatible now, so you can't
Yeah.
play 5 or 6 in any other way. So if you're someone that's following the whole series along, like for the first time, maybe you're playing these remakes and they're not remakes to you, they're like the first ever times you played them, then it'll feel odd to end with four and be like, oh, what came next? You have to kind of lead
Mm.
up. You have to kind of lead it up to seven. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, especially because of the involvement of Chris and stuff like that. That's a big part of it. And obviously, he's a big part of five and six. So, and they
But
can
it's a
always
big part
be
of Code Veronica.
exactly. But then maybe like I said, maybe that's where the convolution of certain spin-off storylines come. But again, I'd love to see it. I mean, it's I've just picked really like obvious ones that I see a lot of people also clamoring for. So maybe if people keep talking about it, maybe Capcom will list them one day. I read on the comments on some of their posts, people are like Code Veronica this and Code Veronica that. So maybe some intel will read it and they'll put it to like one of the top people and be like, people want to shut up about this game and it'll happen. Who knows?
Remake Resident Evil Survivor. That's my shout.
I mean, no, they get desperate enough. Yeah.
I don't think it's impossible. Like, whereas with Metal Gear Solid, I'm very dismissive of that. I wouldn't be surprised if Code Veronica was announced within the end but at some point this year or early next year, and I'd be more than happy for it as long as it doesn't lose that scare factor. But then, to be honest, they've not let me down as I thought with Resident Evil 4. There's no way they could really make the original better, and it turns out they fucking did. So what are you gonna do? You know.
That's why I want it so badly because I've seen how well they've done so up to date, and I can only imagine them doing some of the things in that game so well.
We've definitely got to do a second round of this big question just to give Liam the opportunity to really push the boat out, because I'm about to do that with what is going to be an admittedly impossible thing that's never going to happen and will probably make you scoff. But I'm going to suggest it purely because I'm doing it on the basis of modern tech with grander graphical engines and ability to put more things on screen and delve into more open worlds. And it's weird because it technically did have its long-awaited third game in the last 2 years, but that flopped hard. It is Shenmue. I am suggesting we remake the original Shenmue and start the franchise off again properly. Do it this time without the silliness of 20 whatever years between a game and then putting it on one console only and being surprised that it didn't sell that well, you know, and elements like that. Shenmue. Yeah, simply as this, because Shenmue is, and I've got a lot of nostalgic love for it. So, but that game will never disappear. That will always be there. But the idea of, right, let's do this, keep it pretty much the same, but now we can expand upon it and do what I'm looking for is detail. So, you know, the best comparison, have you played any of the Yakuza games?
I've played Yakuza Zero, yeah.
There you go. The bustling streets, the life, the way that hums, that you're walking around and you feel like that there's life going on around you all the time. It's what you'd think of. You think Shenmue's like that, and then you remember it's not, and that 3/4 of the stores are closed. All the characters stay in the same spot. No one's really moving around. No one's doing anything. They're all in the same place every single day and so on. The actual sort of town area, not town area, the livable houses, there's a handful of people there. No one's at home. You can't knock on doors. You can't speak to people. You can't create relationships. You can't do anything. Oh, you can go to the shop and buy some tapes. You can go and play a few games in the arcade. It's too small. Bigger, Yakuza-style world. And you can keep the storyline the same. You haven't got to expand upon that. You can push. But, you know, the idea that instead of taking a bus to the harbor, you can travel there, and along the way you'll see and do things and stuff like that. Just that's what I'm thinking. Expand, build, grow, allow with a modern console to do that. And as we said, restart this franchise, get it off properly and go, right, this is our baseline. This is what we want people to see, and this is what's going to sell, and then we'll go from there. That's kind of why it is with Shenmue. A lot of mine are just basically bigger and bolder, and it's the same with Shenmue.
Well, that's what a remake should do. Obviously, it should take something and it should make it bigger and bolder. But I don't know, man. I love Shenmue so much, but I just cannot see how it can be done. And the reason is because the things Shenmue did, they've been like they've been dissected by like so many other games. Like you said, Yakuza. There's a game recently I played called Ghostwire Tokyo, and even in
Yep.
that, there's like elements of that remind me of Shenmue, and it's just it's
Sleeping
so many things.
Dogs.
Sleeping Dogs, exactly. And it's like all the things we want Shenmue to be in potential a remake. It's like it's almost like it's been done. And I don't know how
Yep.
Shenmue, in the way it was, like you said, so simplistic and basic. I don't know how that would work on a bigger scale. I have no idea. How could it be like a Yakuza type game? Yeah, in a dream world it would be, but then it's like then all you would do is you'd have a Yakuza game with like the Shenmue story slapped over it. And how would that work? You know, I felt like Shenmue just like happened, it almost happened in like the perfect time in a
Yeah.
way. Like that scale was just kind of what it needed, you know. Otherwise, when it got too big, which it kind of did in Shenmue 2, it kind of lost a little bit of the like even in that game. And then Shenmue 3, I'm aware that has similar issues that Shenmue 2 had, because like even then they're not even sure. Now they made a game and they weren't even sure like how to do that in like a modern way, so they kind of made it in like the old-fashioned way, and people were like, oh well, it's missing all, you know, they're so used to all these modern features that have all these additional things. When they got a game that was almost like a throwback to older games, they were like, oh well, this is too basic, you know, I want more. And it's like, but Shenmue, I don't think it can work in like some open world or something, even though that sounds like amazing on paper. It's like, how do you do that? Yeah.
I've critiqued yours. I expected the same. I'm nodding and smiling because I agree with everything you're saying. This is, I have an idea for it. It is an out there one. There's no sense behind it. It will never happen. That is one I can confidently say will never, ever happen. And you saying the fact that it's been basically asset stripped by all these different games, so it could do nothing unique, I think is pretty much the nail in the coffin as to why it wouldn't even be popular amongst sort of a casual audience to get the numbers that would require it to be a success.
Yeah, like how would you? I don't know how you would even market that, but like you said, hypothetically, if it would happen, you know, I'd love it. I'd buy it day one in a heartbeat. But I would probably just be like the original Chevy, where they would spend so much money on making a huge, massive open world, and they just wouldn't sell enough, and it would just be like history repeating itself. But also, before we conclude, I don't know if you're going to add anything else, but I just got to quickly just put this out there before we end. In 2013 on gbhblofficial.com, I did a article which was basically similar to what we're asking for now. It was a top 10 of games that I wanted HD remastered. So we used to call them HD remasters.
Yep.
It's interesting looking back at it because obviously it's 10 years ago now, and it's interesting the games on there that have actually been remade. So I'm just going to quickly
Hold
run
on.
through the
I'm
10.
gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
try and find it because this is an we're going far back. What would I search
Yeah,
for?
it's called Top 10 Video Games That Need a HD Remake, and it was written by me in
So it'll be in the top
2013.
10. It'll be in the top 10 list. Where's that
Yeah, so
lists? Top list gaming. Yeah, I mean, this is some of the earlier ones we did. If it's that long ago in
yeah,
2013, 10 things, Shenmue, Metal Gear Solid Nukem, 10 Mass Effect moments.
yeah.
Controversial video
In
games.
3 months' time, it will be 10 years, which is kind of scary.
There it
But
is. We also did one called Observe/Need a Sequel.
yeah, we were always doing stuff like this because we were always dreaming about potential remakes of classic games and stuff like that. But looking through this list, like I said, it's quite interesting to see how many things actually have been done at this point. So I
Okay, we'll
don't know if you've
start
got
running us
everything.
down then. Yeah, I've got it in front of me. Run it down from
Okay,
start with number
well,
10.
the first one we have at number 10 that I put was quite randomly now looking back at it, but was Battletoads. Obviously, Battletoads back on the Super Nintendo, I used to play that a lot and love it. And that did get remade recently. I don't. It wasn't exactly a remake. It was basically just a
Sequel.
new game in the Battletoads. Yeah, sequel. I don't know if you played it at all. I played it and I thought it was quite fun actually. Yeah. So I actually quite enjoyed it. So that
That's
one.
not impossible still to believe that that could happen.
True, but I mean, if you think of how long after it happened, then obviously was more originally a Nintendo property, I imagine, Battletoads. So it was quite
Yes,
interesting to
yeah.
see it come out of an Xbox game. Then next we got Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and
I mean,
despite
it's
the fact
there.
that it's there, and it's certainly. I know people shout all over it. I recently played GTA 3 and Vice City from the collection, and they definitely do look better. I think nostalgia goggles, but they look better. But let's not get into how lazy Rockstar was on that, with just basically porting the mobile versions. But it is there, so it did kind of happen. I'm not sure why we couldn't have got more than that. Rockstar had a lot of money, but let's not go too much into it.
Hmm.
Next one is one that I have literally mentioned on this list, and we're 10 years here later. I'm still begging for it, man. It's Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, and hilariously enough, the one after that is also Soul Reaver. I'll be here in 10 years' time, maybe, to do another video. We can laugh about the fact that that still hasn't happened.
Yep.
Uh, and the next one on the list, Metal Gear Solid. You can't make it up. Yeah, there. Clearly, that's just what I want, man. It's never going to happen. And this one's quite interesting.
Really
Number five on
interesting.
the list, I was begging for hopefully one day Capcom would remake Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and we never saw the remake of 1 technically. Obviously, we got the GameCube one, so I was obviously hoping for a proper remake in the vein of what we did get with 2 and 3, but it did happen, so that's pretty cool. Next one, we got the
Killed it.
Spyro 1, 2, and 3. We got the Spyro the Dragon remastered trilogy, which was really great, and they did
The
that a lot.
Reignited trilogy remakes as well, not re-releases, remakes.
Yeah, and I think they did a really great job of making them feel really authentic with modern graphics and stuff like that. Basically, what we hope for a remake to be, in my opinion.
Yep.
And
Oh
the
shit.
Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy we got here, and obviously Crash Team Racing. They still haven't done Crash Bash, which I know a lot of people also would love to see. I have seen recently, I
Hmm.
don't know if you've seen, but they are releasing a new Crash Bandicoot party game. I
Yeah,
forget.
which is basically Crash Bash, isn't it?
Well, it's not anything like Crash Bash at all. It actually looks really like not good, which is people are really annoyed they didn't do Crash Bash and do a proper like party game. But it's almost like an online multiplayer thing, but doesn't look very good. If you
Oh.
watch the footage uploaded, I think it was on IGN. It's not good. But anyway, that did happen. And well, number two, I put Shenmue, but I think what I was hoping for was a HD remaster, mostly more than a remake, which we did technically get. So,
We
and it
did
wasn't.
technically get it.
So it did happen, and that was one of those where we used to talk about how it would never happen. They would, because Shenmue was like, it's this game that never sold anything, and it's got no fans, got like a cult following. It never happened, and it did happen. So I've got a copy of it, and that's still one of my prides and joy to have that happened. And of course, the final one, which is a bit bittersweet for me because I don't actually have a PlayStation 5, so it's the Final Fantasy 7 remake, which is over on the Sony side of things, and it looks like Sony have paid lots of money for that to keep that exclusive. I don't think that's ever going to come over the Xbox side of things, so I'll have to get a PlayStation to play it. But it did happen. It did happen. And these two, well, when I did this list, I remember it was sort of like these are the two that will never happen. We used to talk about, oh, they'll never do that, but it did happen. So it was quite interesting to look back through 10 years later.
10 years later, still waiting for some. Others we actually managed to get. That's quite incredible, really.
Mhm.
You got any thoughts? Particularly, what I'd like to know is, do you, out of the 6 we chose, which do you see most likely to actually get remade? Let's be honest, well, it's not called Veronica, but hey, you might see it a different way. But let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?